Hello Internet and welcome to this day in history for the 7th of December. I fear this is probably not going to be a very big one today because there is really only one thing one can talk about on the first this day in history for the 7th of December, and it is of course something that practically everyone knows about and that practically everyone has spoken about at one point or another, because we are of course talking about 1941 and the Japanese surprise attack on the American fleet stationed at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii and the expansion, if you will, of the Second World War to a world-spanning affair rather than simply a European conflict as has happened so many times. And the problem kind of is I don't really know exactly what to say. You can say that Japan showed the overreach of imperial arrogance in attacking a country with so greater power and industrial output than them. You can claim that Hitler showed again his blithering incompetence in immediately declaring war against America, standing by the Axis Treaty instead of jettisoning it and basically saying we want to still have at least neutrality with America, which would have made it very more difficult for Roosevelt to have joined the side of the Western Allies fighting against Germany and Italy, rather than just a localized war against Japan that would have probably even split the resources of the West, at least for another few years. You could also talk about how the actual attack was a masterpiece of military planning, but which at the same time led to a masterpiece of military incompetence, so to speak, in how Japanese military strategists planned for many attacks during the rest of the war, not apparently being aware that Americans would probably try to defend against the same thing that had already worked. There are many things you can say, but there is very little I can say about it that a lot of other people, as I mentioned, haven't done more than me, better than me, and so many times that I honestly don't believe anyone in the Western world won't already have heard all of these arguments one way or the other. Of course, I could also talk about the heavy irony that the Americans at Pearl Harbor basically got the Monroe Doctrine right back in their face, having had Japan basically telling them to stay out of the affairs of the Far East, and the Americans apparently not realizing that them interfering in the Far East was basically a breach of their own Monroe Doctrine, or at least the principles of such, just at another part of the world. However, none of this excuses the Japanese surprise attack, and certainly on this of all days where America was attacked in a effective but somewhat cowardly fashion, since it happened basically without a previous declaration of war, I am not going to rant on America's moral failings of the 19th and 20th century. Which means there's only one thing left to talk about, a thing that has been discussed to death as well, but which I feel at this particular moment where isolationism is at least making its token reappearance in American politics, I will finish this very short video by pointing out once and for all that, if nothing else, Pearl Harbor should prove the fact that even if you are not interested in the rest of the world is very interested in you, and that locking yourself behind walls of indifference to the rest of the world is not a guarantee that you will be allowed to be sitting there without the rest of the world being different to you. What a terrible pun. Anyway, I hope this has been of at least slight interest. I'm sorry this could not have been more interested, but I have to talk about that particular event on this day in history, 7th of December, the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor by the Imperial Navy of Japan. Until next time, I have been the Sage, and I wish you all a very happy day.